All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're looking at the 2007 Iraqi national football team and how they pulled off something that was, frankly, impossible, both on and off the pitch. Now, if you're a fan of underdog stories, this one, it completely defies logic. We're talking about a squad conquering their entire continent while their home country was literally tearing itself apart. I mean, think about it. Winning a major continental tournament is a massive feat for any stable nation with millions of dollars in infrastructure, right? But to do it from the absolute depths of a brutal war with practically no resources and constant tragedy, it's a sporting anomaly that stands entirely on its own in modern history. Just take a second and look at the profound emotional weight of this simple quote from team captain Younis Mahmoud. When asked about his game-winning goal in the final, he didn't take the credit. No, he immediately deflected it to the millions of people watching back home. All the Iraqi people scored, not just me. Keep this quote in the back of your mind, because it perfectly captures the spirit and really the heavy communal burden of what we're unpacking today. So, the big question deriving this explainer is exactly how this unprecedented sporting miracle happened amidst such unrelenting tragedy. How does a diverse group of athletes, simply playing a game, temporarily halt a civil war? It's wild to think about. How do they achieve a level of national unity that seasoned politicians and international military forces couldn't even dream of? Well, to understand the staggering height of their victory, we first have to understand the sheer depth of their starting point. Which brings us to Section 1, Chaos Before the Cup. To really grasp the scale of this chaos, we have to look at the reality of Iraq in 2007. 4 years after the U.S.-led invasion, the country was deeply entrenched in devastating sectarian violence. For these players, just getting to practice was a literal life-threatening endeavor. And tragically, the horror of the war hit the team directly when their own physiotherapist was killed by a car bomb in Baghdad right before the tournament began. So they were grieving before they even stepped onto a pitch. Inside the locker room, it wasn't much better. Following a dismal 2-0 friendly loss to Uzbekistan, the players and coach despised each other so intensely that the team actually offered to pool their own money to buy out the coach's contract, just to make him leave. The dysfunction was so absolute, the Iraqi FA genuinely considered scrapping the entire senior squad and sending the under-23 Olympic team instead. So into this incredibly toxic environment steps Jorvan Vieira, a Brazilian manager brought in just 2 months before the Asian Cup kicked off. 2 months, that's zero preparation time. He barely knew the guys, the team was in complete disarray, and the nation was grieving. Actually, his very first act when meeting the Iraqi FA vice president was handing over a list of players he wanted removed from the squad immediately. It was just a pressure cooker of anger, grief, and impossibly low expectations. Moving on to Section 2, the underdogs advance. Their miraculous group stage run kicked off with kind of a calamitous opening match against Thailand. They conceded a penalty just 6 minutes in, but somehow fought back for a 1-1 draw. But okay, the real turning point, the moment everything shifted, match 2. They faced a star-studded Australian squad making their highly anticipated Asian Cup debut. We're talking global Premier League legends here, Tim Cahill, Mark Viduka, Harry Cowell. A squad with the best training, the best diets, the best funding. If Iraq lost this match, Coach Vieira was almost certainly getting fired on the spot. Instead, against all odds and against all logic, they pulled off a stunning 3-1 upset, completely dismantling the Aussie superstars. They followed that up with a hard-fought draw against Oman to top their entire group. And they rode that incredible momentum right into the knockout stages. They dispatched co-host Vietnam 2-0, highlighted by captain Younis Mahmoud, scoring the fastest goal of the whole tournament in a blindingly quick 79 seconds. Then came South Korea in the semis. This was a team that had previously crushed them 3-0. But this time, they fought tooth and nail to a 0-0 draw after 120 exhausting minutes. It went to penalties, and they survived that shootout 4-3, entirely thanks to the quiet heroism of their goalkeeper, Noor Sabri. Now get this, Sabri was out there making these massive tournament-saving dives while actively mourning his own brother-in-law, who had just been murdered on the streets of Baghdad mere weeks earlier. The emotional toll he was carrying is just unimaginable. Now, Section 3, Tragedy Strikes at Home. 50. That's the number of lives tragically lost in Baghdad in a single day. You see, while the country was out on the streets joyously celebrating the team's incredible semifinal win over South Korea, 2 suicide bombers deliberately targeted the massive crowds of celebrating fans. In an instant, the joy of a nation was replaced once again by unimaginable grief and bloodshed. And the turning point for the entire squad came from one heartbroken mother. She appeared on Iraqi state television right in the devastating aftermath of the bombings. Her 12-year-old son, Haidar, had been killed in the attack while celebrating his favorite team. Through her unimaginable grief, she made this public, earth-shattering vow. She would refuse to hold a wake for her boy until the national team returned home as Asian Cup champions. She placed the weight of her son's memory directly on their shoulders. Hearing her desperate cries all the way in Southeast Asia, the players were just utterly devastated. The burden was so heavy that there were serious initial thoughts of withdrawing from the final entirely, just out of respect for the dead and a desperate desire to prevent any further bloodshed on the streets of Baghdad. But instead, they found a profound new purpose. They pledged to play on. They made a solemn, unbreakable vow to win the entire tournament for Haidar, for his grieving mother, and for every single person suffering back in Iraq. This sacred vow brings us to Section 4, the historic final match. The stakes for this final were just unbelievably high. They were playing in front of 60,000 roaring spectators in Jakarta against Saudi Arabia. Now, the Saudis were not only the heavy, undisputed favorites, but they were already 3-time Asian Cup winners. Adding this massive layer of personal drama, Coach Vieira was facing off against a nation where he just experienced a bitter professional failure, having been unceremoniously sacked by a Saudi club just months prior. Before they walked out of the tunnel, Vieira made his team sit on the pitch, look around that intimidating stadio, and told them, "Here, tomorrow is our match. I don't think we'll get to this point again." It really was now or never. The tension in that stadium, and honestly back in homes across Iraq, was unbearable. It was a tight, nerve-wracking match. On TV, the Iraqi sports commentator was literally praying on air, his voice cracking as he begged, "Oh God, bring joy to my heart and my people." And then, in the 72nd minute, that prayer was answered. Hawar Mullah Muhammad swings in this beautiful, sweeping corner kick. Captain Younis Mahmoud rises high above the defense, hangs in the air, and powers the header right past the despairing Saudi keeper. Against all odds, against every single metric of logic or reason, the final whistle blew. Iraq won, Saudi Arabia 0. They actually did it. They secured Iraq's first ever Asian Cup championship, booking a ticket to the 2009 Confederations Cup in South Africa, and completing what remains one of the most unbelievable, tear-jerking fairy tale runs in the history of international sports. A team of fractured, grieving men had just conquered Asia. And finally, Section 5, a united nation. Because as incredible as the football was, the real victory happened far away from the pitch in Indonesia. Back in Baghdad, the overwhelming joy accomplished what seemed entirely impossible to the rest of the world. Sunnis, Shiites, and Kurds, groups that had been engaged in brutal, devastating civil conflict for years, were suddenly shoulder to shoulder in the streets, celebrating as one single people. For a brief shining moment, there was absolutely no retaliatory violence. Weapons were fired, yes, but only into the sky in joyous tribute. The streets were so packed with completely peaceful celebrating crowds that the U.S. military helicopters actually suspended their regular patrols. The war, for one beautiful night, simply stopped. The true legacy of the 2007 Lions of Mesopotamia goes way beyond a trophy or a record book. They were a remarkably diverse team that managed to heal and unite a fractured nation when powerful politicians, heavily armed military forces, and international diplomats simply could not. They challenged the deeply entrenched sectarianism dividing their country and brought genuine, unadulterated smiles to a population that had been drowning in tears and suffering for years. They gave the people hope when hope seemed completely extinct. It's just a breathtaking testament to the undeniable power of shared joy and common purpose. So, I'll leave you with this final question to truly ponder. What other moments in history has sport achieved what politics could not? It proves that sometimes the greatest, most profound impact of a game happens long, long after the final whistle. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring the incredible stories behind the data.